The galaxy had always been a place of endless conflict, a vast ocean of stars where empires rose and fell like tides. Worlds burned, civilizations crumbled, and the cries of the defeated echoed through the void. Among the countless empires, one stood above all in fear and power, the Zorath Dominion. It was an empire that knew only conquest. Its fleets were endless, stretching across light years like a living storm. Entire species bowed before it or were reduced to nothing. The Dominion had learned a simple rule. Resistance was meaningless. For decades, the galaxy had lived under their shadow. Planets that resisted were annihilated with terrifying precision. Fleet after fleet of Zorath warships carved paths of fire through the void, leaving nothing but smoke and silence behind. No one dared to rise against them, and even whispers of rebellion were crushed before they could take form. Among the Dominion, strength was measured in numbers, and fear was the only currency. The galaxy believed that nothing could challenge the unstoppable might of the Dominion. Then came the humans. The first time the Dominion heard of them, it was through intercepted transmissions from a distant system. The humans were few in number, scattered across a small region of space, barely making themselves noticed in galactic politics. They had small ships, aging technology, and no grand armies like the Dominions. They were weak, fragile, and utterly insignificant. The Dominion laughed. Their admirals laughed. Even the smallest Zorath scout laughed. Humans, they said, they are barely a nuisance. We could crush them without effort. So when a single human warship suddenly appeared in contested space, the galaxy laughed again. It was a small, unremarkable ship, and it carried no visible escorts. A lone human vessel drifting into the path of the Dominion's greatest fleet. It was almost too ridiculous to take seriously. The Zorath. Commanders could barely contain their scorn. Screens flickered across the bridges of their ships, showing the tiny shape of the human craft. "This is what we are worried about?" one commander barked, laughter in his voice. "A single ship? We could roast it like a snack and not even slow down." Across the galaxy, satellites recorded the event. Mercenary fleets, smug planetary, governments, and even neutral observers tuned in, curious to see what this human folly might achieve. Almost everyone expected the same thing: a quick annihilation, a minor footnote in the Dominion's endless war. No one could imagine the truth that was about to unfold. On the bridge of the human ship, the atmosphere was calm but tense. The vessel, called the Resolute, was battered and old, its hull scarred from previous skirmishes in distant human colonies. Its weapon systems were modest compared to the Dominion's fleets, and yet it was alive with purpose. Captain Elias Kane stood at the helm, a tall man with a worn uniform and eyes that had seen countless battles. His crew moved silently around him, each person focused, each mind sharp. They were small in number, yes, but they were humans. And humans had a stubbornness that no fleet in the galaxy could predict. Kane's eyes traced the glimmer of thousands of Zorath warships approaching in formation, a dark tide ready to wash over them. He did not flinch. He did not panic. Instead, he let a faint smile touch his lips. The Dominion did not understand humans. They had never faced a species that fought not just with weapons, but with heart, with will, with unbroken determination. Kane turned to his crew, his voice low but carrying a strange, calm authority. "They think we are nothing," he said, his tone carrying across the bridge. "They think one ship, one crew cannot matter. But we will show them that even the smallest spark can set a universe on fire. Today, they will learn what it means to face humanity." The crew exchanged glances, their fear tempered by trust in their captain. They had faced impossible odds before: raids on hostile planets, ambushes by pirates, attacks from other alien species, and they had survived. But nothing could have prepared them for the sheer scale of the Dominion's fleet. Thousands of ships stretched across the stars, forming a wall of dark metal and lethal firepower. The hum of their engines reverberated through space, a sound that could crush morale in the heart of the faintest soul. Yet the humans did not tremble. They had been raised to face adversity, to push forward when all hope seemed lost. The Resolutes. Crew tightened their grips on controls and weapons, their hearts beating in synchronized determination. Every human aboard carried the weight of their entire species. Not just soldiers, but protectors of hope. To retreat was unthinkable. To surrender was impossible. They would fight, even if it meant standing alone against a storm that could swallow them whole. In the Dominion's war channels, commands were shouted, laughter echoing through the comms. "Open fire!" one admiral barked. "Crush them! They are nothing!" Yet in the hearts of the humans aboard the Resolute, the Dominion's words were meaningless. Mockery could not shake them. Arrogance could not deter them. They were ready, and they would show the galaxy that strength was not always counted in numbers. As the human ship drifted forward, facing the coming storm, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. For the first time in a long time, the galaxy waited to see if a single human could defy the impossible. And somewhere deep in the void, the first spark of what would become a legend flickered in silence, waiting to ignite a fire that would consume the pride of empires. The gathering storm had arrived. The Dominion believed it would be easy. Humans believed it would be impossible. And yet, in the hearts of those aboard the Resolute, hope burned brighter than any fear. The Resolute glided silently through the dark expanse of space, its engines a quiet hum against the endless void. Around it, the stars seemed to stretch farther, distant and cold, indifferent to the small human vessel that dared to face the galaxy's deadliest empire. For most species, even approaching the Dominion fleet would have meant instant panic, but aboard the Resolute, the air was tense, yet steady. The humans had faced impossible odds before, and each time they had endured. Today, they would do so again. Captain Elias Kane stood at the helm, his hands resting lightly on the console. His eyes scanned the viewports, taking in the massive formation of Zorath ships that loomed ahead. Each one was a moving fortress, gleaming with the deadly promise of plasma cannons, missile turrets, and fleets of fighters. To any ordinary being, the sight would have been terrifying. To Kane, it was a challenge, a puzzle to be solved. He felt no fear, only a deep, steady focus. The crew moved around him with quiet efficiency. Engineers monitored the ship's core, checking shields and power levels. Weapons officers ran simulations, plotting firing sequences and targeting points. Each human aboard the Resolute understood the stakes. They were small, fragile, and alone, yes, but they were the front line of humanity's honor, the embodiment of resilience against impossible odds. "Captain," said Lieutenant Mara Tolan, the ship's tactical officer, her voice calm yet sharp, "they're forming a wedge. If they close in like this, they can cut off our escape vectors in less than 10 minutes. Kane's gaze did not waver. He had expected their formation. He had anticipated their arrogance. "Then we give them the fight they deserve," he replied. "They think one ship cannot matter. Let's show them that even a single human vessel can change the course of a battle." His voice carried calm authority, but beneath it was a quiet fire. The kind of fire that only humans possessed, a defiance born from centuries of survival against impossible circumstances. The Dominion fleet closed in, thousands of ships shining like a constellation of death. Their communications channels buzzed with laughter and derision. "Pathetic," one admiral sneered. "They think they can challenge us? Do they even understand what war is?" The humans did not respond. They did not need to. Words could not sway them, and taunts could not break them. They had been forged in fire, in hardship, and in battles where every decision could mean life or death. Fear had no place here. Courage, filled the void where fear would have grown, a light no enemy could extinguish. Kane turned to his crew, his eyes moving from one officer to another. "Prepare for engagement," he said. "Remember, they have numbers. We have something stronger: will, precision, and the refusal to die without leaving a mark. Today, humanity will be remembered." The crew nodded, faces set with determination. No one flinched. Every human aboard knew that they were the last line of defense, not just for themselves, but for the ideals of their species. They would not flee. They would not surrender. They would fight, even if the odds were impossibly stacked against them. As the Dominion ships advanced, the humans made their first move. Small, sudden bursts of energy flared from the Resolute, sending minor but calculated shocks into the enemy formation. Zorath ships stumbled, unprepared for the precise, unpredictable strikes. The humans were agile, maneuvering their ship like a living predator among lumbering giants. "Shields holding at 90%, reported the engineer, Lieutenant Varek. "Engines stable, weapons ready." "Good," Kane replied. "Keep them guessing. Every strike must count. We have no margin for waste." Hours passed, and the battle began to take shape. The Dominion unleashed waves of plasma fire, missiles, and fighter swarms. The stars themselves seemed to erupt in explosions, as if the void could not contain the violence. Yet the Resolute danced through it all. The ship moved like a shadow, striking where the Dominion least expected. The silence of space shattered with a sudden blaze of light. The Resolute fired its first volley. The small human ship, dwarfed by the massive Dominion fleet, released precise energy beams that sliced through the void like lightning. Zorath ships, confident in their superiority, barely had time to register the strike before alarms screamed across their bridges. Hulls buckled, shields flickered, and explosions bloomed like deadly flowers in the darkness. On board the Resolute, the crew held, their breath each heartbeat in sync with the next. The first strike was never just about damage. It was a statement. Humanity, small and seemingly fragile, had decided that it would not bow. Captain Elias Kane watched the screens, his eyes sharp, calculating. "They will not see it coming," he said quietly, a calm fire in his voice. "And when it hits, they will know that underestimating humans is their greatest mistake." The Dominion admirals roared in disbelief. Their fleets were vast, their numbers overwhelming. "Impossible!" one bellowed. "How could a single ship? This is a trick. It cannot be." Yet there it was. Their ships, some of the mightiest in the galaxy, torn apart in seconds by the weapon of one human vessel. The first shock spread through their ranks, and the laughter that had once mocked the humans turned into disbelief and then fear. The human crew, meanwhile, moved like a single entity. Every officer understood their role. Every movement, every calculation, every strike was precise. The Resolute dodged incoming fire with swift, unpredictable movements. Engineers rerouted energy to reinforce shields at the exact moment of impact. Weapons officers calculated trajectories not by the numbers, but by instinct honed from decades of human ingenuity. They were small, yes, but they were alive in a way the Dominion could not comprehend. "Incoming plasma volley, starboard side," shouted one of the weapons officers. The fire was heavy, designed to crush entire fleets in one strike. Kane's fingers danced across the console. "Evade in 3, 2, now!" The ship twisted in space, narrowly escaping the devastating barrage. Sparks flew across the hull, alarms screamed, but the Resolute remained intact, unharmed in ways the Dominion thought impossible. Outside, the Dominion ships reeled. Their precision formations, which had never failed before, faltered against a single human strategy that was both simple and brilliant. Move fast, strike precisely, and refuse to be trapped. Their numbers meant nothing when the target was elusive, unpredictable, and relentlessly determined. The first human strike had ignited the battle. Explosions bloomed across the battlefield, turning the starscape into a chaotic storm of fire and debris. Dominion fighters scrambled to respond, missiles streaking through the void, energy pulses burning toward the Resolute. Yet each attack found its mark deflected, dodged, or neutralized by the skill of humans who had learned that the smallest actions could change the course of history. Lieutenant Mara Tolan leaned over the tactical display, her eyes sharp. "They're reorganizing," she said. "They won't let one ship destroy their formation without a fight. Expect concentrated fire next." Kane nodded, calm as always. "Let them come," he said. "The more they try to crush us, the more they will reveal their weaknesses. Every strike they make can be used against them. Remember, we do not just fight to survive. We fight to make them remember humanity." The Dominion unleashed their fury in waves. Cruisers fired, fighters swarmed, and missiles tore through the void. Space itself seemed to erupt in flame. But the Resolute danced through it all. Each human crew member understood that fear was useless. Survival depended on courage, strategy, and sheer will. They had no choice but to fight with every ounce of their being. Then, Kane ordered something unexpected. "Focus on the center command ships," he said. "We will show them that even their leaders are not untouchable." Human weapons concentrated. Energy with terrifying efficiency. Bolts of energy struck the largest Dominion vessels, ripping through their shields and cracking their hulls. The explosions were immense, sending shock waves across the fleet. Command signals were disrupted, chaos spread, and for the first time, the Dominion realized that one ship, one human ship, could influence the battle's outcome. The crew of the Resolute felt a surge of hope. They had not only survived the first strike, but they had turned the tide of the battle in small ways. Every explosion of a Dominion ship was a reminder of human resilience, every evasive maneuver a testament to courage. The fear that had been creeping through the fleet now shifted. The galaxy would never again assume humans were weak. In the Dominions, command center's shock and anger spread like wildfire. "We are losing control," one admiral screamed. "How can this be? One ship! Just one ship!" His voice trembled with rage and disbelief. The arrogance of their empire, which had never been questioned, was collapsing under the force of something they had ignored. They had mocked, underestimated, and ridiculed humanity, and now they were paying the price. Kane watched the destruction, his calm voice steady. "This is only the beginning," he said to his crew. "They mocked us because they did not understand. But now they know. They will never underestimate a human again. Every move we make, every strike we land, will teach them that size does not equal strength and numbers do not equal power." The Resolute moved forward through the devastation, a single ship against thousands. Yet within its hull, the hearts of its crew burned brighter than any weapon. They were humans, and humans never surrendered. Even in the darkest void, with enemies closing in from all sides, hope thrived. They had turned their fear into courage, their weakness into strength. The first strike had shattered the illusion of invincibility. The Dominion fleet now faced a force it could not predict, a fire it could not contain. And somewhere deep in the stars, the quiet spark of a legend began to grow. One human ship against an entire empire. And already, the galaxy was starting to remember the name, Resolute. The stars around the Resolute burned with light and fire. Dominion ships erupted one after another, their massive hulls torn apart by the human vessel's precise strikes. The void was no longer silent. It roared with the soundless thunder of explosions, debris spinning like deadly snow across the battlefield. Each ship that fell was a testament to humanity's unexpected strength, and each human aboard the Resolute felt the weight of the moment pressing down on their shoulders. Captain Elias Kane stood at the helm, his hands steady on the controls. His eyes scanned the chaos, calculating angles, velocities, and timing with a cold precision that hid the storm of adrenaline inside him. Around him, his crew moved as one, a single organism, synchronized, each human pulse in rhythm with the ship's own heartbeat. They had trained for battles before, yes, but never like this. Never against a fleet so vast, so confident, so sure that their numbers would guarantee victory. Lieutenant Mara Tolan leaned over the tactical console, her eyes wide but focused. "They're changing formation, Captain. They're trying to encircle us. Cut off our escape vectors. If we're not careful, we could be trapped in the center." Kane's voice was calm but firm. "Then we adapt. Humans survive not by waiting for the storm to pass. We survive by moving through it, by using it against our enemies. Focus on the smallest gap, fire where they least expect it, and keep them off balance. Every strike counts. Every maneuver matters." The Resolute darted through space, a small silver blade cutting between the massive warships of the Dominion. Plasma bolts streaked past, missing by inches, while missiles detonated harmlessly against deflected shields. Each movement was precise, deliberate yet daring, like a dance on the edge of a knife. The Dominion commanders shouted orders, their pride cracking under the pressure. They were trained for battles, yes, but never for a foe that moved with such unpredictability. "Shields at 70%, Captain," shouted Lieutenant Varek, the ship's engineer. Sparks flew from the panels as he rerouted energy from non-essential systems to reinforce the hull. "We can take a hit, but we won't survive another salvo like that." Kane nodded. "We won't get 2 hits. We'll make this one count." He turned back to the main screen, eyes narrowing. "Target their central dreadnoughts. If we can break their command ships, the rest will fall like dominoes." The crew braced themselves as the Resolute launched into a daring maneuver, weaving between the enemy fleet with astonishing speed. Energy beams struck with deadly accuracy, shattering shields and cracking hulls. Dominion officers screamed in disbelief as their largest vessels erupted in fire and metal. The explosion waves rippled across space, shaking smaller ships and causing chaos in the formation. For the first time, the Dominion fleet realized that sheer numbers were meaningless against a strategy they could not predict. In the bridge of the Resolute, the crew moved with silent efficiency. Engineers recalculated energy flows, weapons officers tracked weak points in real time, and every human aboard felt the rhythm of the battle in their bones. Fear had no place here. It had been replaced with a burning determination. Each human knew that they were more than just a ship. They were the embodiment of a species that refused to surrender, that refused to bow before tyranny. The Dominion attempted to respond. Fighter swarms surged, plasma volleys rained down, and massive dreadnoughts opened fire with full intensity. Yet each attack was countered by the Resolute's speed, maneuvering, and precision. One by one, enemy ships fell apart. The stars around the Resolute burned with light and fire. Dominion ships erupted one after another, their massive hulls torn apart by the human vessel's precise strikes. The void was no longer silent. It roared with the soundless thunder of explosions, debris spinning like deadly snow across the battlefield. Each ship that fell was a testament to humanity's unexpected strength, and each human aboard the Resolute felt the weight of the moment pressing down on their shoulders. Captain Elias Kane stood at the helm, his hands steady on the controls. His eyes scanned the chaos, calculating angles, velocities, and timing with a cold precision that hid the storm of adrenaline inside him. Around him, his crew moved as one, a single organism, synchronized, each human pulse in rhythm with the ship's own heartbeat. They had trained for battles before, yes, but never like this. Never against a fleet so vast, so confident, so sure that their numbers would guarantee victory. Lieutenant Mara Tolan leaned over the tactical console, her eyes wide but focused. "They're changing formation, Captain. They're trying to encircle us, cut off our escape vectors. If we're not careful, we could be trapped in the center." Kane's voice was calm but firm. Then we adapt. Humans survive not by waiting for the storm to pass. We survive by moving through it, by using it against our enemies. Focus on the smallest gap, fire where they least expect it, and keep them off balance. Every strike counts. Every maneuver matters. The Resolute darted through space, a small silver blade cutting between the massive warships of the Dominion. Plasma bolts streaked past, missing by inches, while missiles detonated harmlessly against deflected shields. Each movement was precise, deliberate yet daring, like a dance on the edge of a knife. The Dominion commanders shouted orders, their pride cracking under the pressure. They were trained for battles, yes, but never for a foe that moved with such unpredictability. "Shields at 70%, Captain," shouted Lieutenant Varek, the ship's engineer. Sparks flew from the panels as he rerouted energy from non-essential systems to reinforce the hull. "We can take a hit, but we won't survive another salvo like that." Kane nodded. "We won't get 2 hits. We'll make this one count." He turned back to the main screen, eyes narrowing. "Target their central dreadnoughts. If we can break their command ships, the rest will fall like dominoes." The crew braced themselves as the Resolute launched into a daring maneuver, weaving between the enemy fleet with astonishing speed. Energy beams struck with deadly accuracy, shattering shields and cracking hulls. Dominion officers screamed in disbelief as their largest vessels erupted in fire and metal. The explosion waves rippled across space, shaking smaller ships and causing chaos in the formation. For the first time, the Dominion fleet realized that sheer numbers were meaningless against a strategy they could not predict. In the bridge of the Resolute, the crew moved with silent efficiency. Engineers recalculated energy flows, weapons officers tracked weak points in real time, and every human aboard felt the rhythm of the battle in their bones. Fear had no place here. It had been replaced with a burning determination. Each human knew that they were more than just a ship. They were the embodiment of a species that refused to surrender, that refused to bow before tyranny. The Dominion attempted to respond. Fighter swarms surged, plasma volleys rained down, and massive dreadnoughts opened fire with full intensity. Yet each attack was countered by the Resolute's speed, maneuvering, and precision. One by one, enemy ships fell apart, their formation breaking under the relentless assault of a single human vessel. The galaxy had assumed humans were weak, fragile, and insignificant. Today, the truth was being written in fire. Mara Tolan's voice broke through the hum of the bridge. "Captain, they're retreating. Some ships are trying to pull back." Kane allowed a small, grim smile. "Good. Let them run. They will not escape entirely, and they will remember. Every one of them who survives will carry fear of humans in their hearts. That is as important as the victory itself." Yet even in this moment of triumph, the tension remained. The Dominion was not defeated yet. They regrouped, recalibrated, and attacked with renewed fury. But the humans had become something more than just a ship. They were a force of will, and their determination made them unpredictable, unstoppable in ways the Dominion had never imagined. Every strike the Resolute made was calculated not only to destroy, but to inspire its crew. They were fighting, not just for survival, but for honor, for pride, and for the principle that no matter how small, courage could topple giants. Each explosion that tore through a Dominion cruiser was a reminder of what it meant to be human, to stand firm, to fight when all seems lost, and to burn brighter against the darkness than any empire could imagine. Hours passed, yet the battle raged. The void became a chaotic storm of fire and debris. Dominion fleets staggered under the unexpected fury of one human ship, their confidence shattered, their arrogance broken. The galaxy had expected a quick annihilation of the Resolute, but instead, they witnessed a small vessel ignite a storm of fear and respect that would echo across light years. Kane stood tall, watching the destruction. His crew moved around him, like a symphony of precision and courage. Each human aboard the Resolute had become more than a soldier. They had become a symbol. And in that moment, amidst the chaos, Kane whispered quietly to himself, "The galaxy will never see us as weak again." The battle had ignited fully. Humanity had shown its spark, and the Dominion would soon realize that their empire's greatest flaw was never in their weapons, but in underestimating the unyielding spirit of a single human ship. The storm had begun, and it would not end until the galaxy remembered the name Resolute. The void of space had become a battlefield of fire and smoke, a place where stars seemed to tremble in fear. The Resolute darted through the chaos, a single silver arrow cutting between the monstrous Zorath warships. Explosions blossomed like deadly flowers, scattering debris across the battlefield. Yet, despite the destruction around them, the human crew remained calm, focused, and unyielding. Each of them knew that this was not just a fight for survival. It was a fight to redefine the galaxy's understanding of humanity. Captain Elias Kane stood at the helm, eyes sharp, scanning the endless storm of ships. His mind moved faster than the Resolute itself, calculating every trajectory, every velocity, every opening in the enemy's formation. Around him, the crew worked as one, each human a vital part of the vessel's heartbeat. No fear existed here. Only the steady rhythm of determination and precision. "Captain," said Lieutenant Mara Tolan, her voice steady despite the chaos, "they're concentrating their fire. Multiple dreadnoughts are targeting us. They're trying to crush us in a single strike." Kane's jaw tightened. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, but he did not waver. "Good," he said calmly. "That is exactly what we want. Every ship they commit, every attack they launch is an opportunity. Use it. Every weakness they show will be a weapon in our hands." Outside the Resolute, the Dominion's fleet surged forward like a living wall of steel and death. Plasma beams streaked across space, missiles detonated in deadly showers, and the void itself seemed to burn with the intensity of the battle. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, the humans remained alive, moving with a grace and precision that seemed impossible. The first volley struck the Resolute, shaking its hull and lighting the bridge with warning signals. Sparks flew, panels cracked, and alarms screamed. Yet the crew reacted instantly. Engineers rerouted energy to reinforce shields, weapons officers calculated new attack vectors, and the helmsman twisted the ship in impossible angles to avoid the worst of the fire. One by one, the attacks fell short. Shields holding at 60%, Lieutenant Varric reported, sweat on his brow. "We can survive, but only if we maintain focus. One misstep." Kane cut him off with a firm glance. "No missteps. We are humans. We survive by refusing to yield. Every move we make counts. Hold fast." Then Kane made his move. With a sudden shift in trajectory, the Resolute darted into the center of the Dominion formation. The larger ships had not anticipated such audacity. Their guns fired, missiles launched, but the human ship moved faster than their calculations. Aloud. Energy beams struck where shields were weakest, targeting command modules, engines, and communication arrays. One by one, Dominion dreadnoughts staggered, their formation breaking under precise, calculated strikes. Around the galaxy, hidden observers watched in disbelief. How could a single human ship turn the tide of an entire fleet? How could one small vessel stand against thousands of heavily armed warships? The answer was simple. Humanity fought with something the Dominion could not measure: courage, ingenuity, and unyielding spirit. Inside the Resolute, the crew felt a surge of hope. Each explosion of an enemy ship was a victory, yes, but also a spark of pride. They were small, fragile, alone, but they were humans, and humans did not surrender. Every strike, every evasive maneuver, every calculated attack reminded them of why they were here. Not just to survive, but to make a statement. Humanity could not be ignored. The Dominion commanders screamed orders in fury. Concentrate all. Fire! Destroy the human! Focus every weapon! But the more they tried, the worse their coordination became. Their pride had blinded them to the unpredictable brilliance of one small human vessel. The battlefield was chaos incarnate. Stars glimmered through smoke and fire, but the void was filled with screams, or at least the silent screams of exploding ships. The Resolute moved like a silver ghost, weaving through the devastation with deadly precision. The Dominion fleet, once proud and arrogant, staggered under the relentless attacks of one human vessel. Yet, despite the victories, Captain Elias Kane knew the hardest part was yet to come. The enemy would not simply surrender. They were an empire built on pride, cruelty, and domination, and pride could never tolerate defeat. The remaining Zorath dreadnoughts were consolidating, their weapons now focused entirely on the Resolute. Plasma bolts, missiles, and fighter. Swarms tore through space, each attack more desperate and more violent than the last. The human ship's shields flared and shuddered under the strain, sparks flying across the bridge as alarms blared. "Shields are at 30%, shouted Lieutenant Varric, sweat dripping down his face. "We can't take much more, Captain." Kane's jaw tightened. He didn't answer immediately. He looked out at the stars, at the explosions and debris of ships falling apart. He looked at his crew, exhausted but unbroken. Every human on that ship carried more than weapons. They carried courage, determination, and the hope of a species that had always survived against impossible odds. "Then we make every hit count," Kane said finally. "No ship left unchallenged, no weakness ignored. We fight for every moment, every life, every human who believes we can win." The crew moved with a renewed intensity. Each maneuver was precise, each attack deliberate. They had become more than a ship. They were a storm in human form. The Dominion fleet, despite their overwhelming numbers, began to falter. Their dreadnoughts staggered under coordinated strikes. Fighters were shredded in seconds. Command signals failed, throwing their formations into disarray. The empire that had once ruled the stars with an iron fist now faced panic, confusion, and fear. But Kane knew it wasn't over. There was one final push, one last stand. If they failed, the Resolute would fall, and the human legend would end. "Here, swallowed by fire and the arrogance of an empire. Target their command dreadnoughts," Kane ordered. "Focus everything on the center. Hit them where it hurts the most." Energy beams, missiles, and plasma fire converged on the largest ships of the Dominion. Explosions erupted, shaking nearby vessels and spreading shockwaves through the fleet. One by one, command ships were destroyed, their control networks shattered. The remaining dreadnoughts began to retreat, confusion spreading like wildfire. For the first time, the Dominion realized that they were losing, that one human ship had the power to undo their empire's pride. On the bridge, the crew of the Resolute let out a collective breath. For a brief moment, silence filled the ship. The silence after a storm, heavy but alive with triumph. But Kane did not smile. Not yet. His eyes were fixed on the last remaining ships, their weapons still dangerous, still capable of destruction. "Prepare for boarding," he said quietly. "If they come closer, we will meet them head on. Humans never wait to be crushed. We fight until the very end." The crew nodded, hearts pounding but spirits unwavering. They had come too far to yield now. Every human aboard had stared into the abyss of the Dominion fleet and had refused to look away. Every life on this ship had been tested, every soul sharpened like steel. They had become more than survivors. They were heroes, legends in the making. Outside, the Dominion faltered completely. Their fleet, once a terrifying wall of firepower, now broke into retreat. The smaller ships fled first, followed by the larger ones, leaving behind a trail of burning debris. Their arrogance had been destroyed, their pride shattered, and the galaxy watched in awe as a single human ship had changed the course of battle. Kane allowed himself a moment to breathe, though his eyes remained fixed on the retreating enemy. "They will remember this day," he said softly. "Every survivor will carry the memory of one human ship that refused to be crushed, and every corner of the galaxy will know that humanity cannot be mocked." The crew looked around at one another. Faces were streaked with sweat, dust, and fear, but in their eyes burned triumph. They had survived. They had faced an empire and turned the tide. They had done what no one thought possible. And yet, even in victory, Kane reminded them of something more important: humility, courage, and the understanding that survival was a responsibility, not a gift. "Captain," Mara said, her voice trembling slightly, We did it. They're gone." "Yes," Kane replied. His voice was calm but filled with emotion. "But never forget, it is not just weapons or speed that won this fight. It was courage. It was will. It was the refusal to give up no matter how impossible it seemed. That is what makes us human." As the Resolute drifted through the battlefield, the wreckage of the Dominion fleet surrounding them like tombstones. In the void, the crew felt a deep sense of pride. They had stared into the face of impossible odds and survived. They had shown the galaxy that even a single human ship could topple empires and leave legends in its wake. And somewhere in the silent expanse of stars across planets and systems, oppressed species began to whisper hope. For if one human ship could destroy a fleet, then perhaps one human heart, one human mind, one human spirit could never be conquered. Captain Kane looked out at the stars, the flames of battle reflected in his eyes. The cost had been high. The battle had been brutal. But the message was clear. Humanity had arrived. Humanity had fought. Humanity had won. The galaxy would never be the same again. And in that quiet moment, the legend of the Resolute became eternal. Not just a ship, but a symbol of courage, defiance, and the unstoppable spirit of humanity. The battle was over. The void of space, once alive with fire and death, had fallen silent. Smoke and debris floated across the stars like scattered memories of war. The Dominion fleet lay broken and retreating, its arrogance shattered, its pride in ruins. And in the midst of it all, the Resolute drifted, battered, scarred, but unbroken. Captain Elias Kane stood at the helm, his hands resting lightly on the console. The ship had survived the impossible. His crew had endured, fought, and triumphed against a fleet that had thought them insignificant. For a moment, Kane allowed himself to feel the weight of what had been accomplished. This was not just victory. This was history. This was humanity's declaration to the galaxy. They could not be underestimated, they could not be mocked, and they would never bow. Around him, the crew worked quietly. Repairs were underway, shields being reinforced, weapons systems checked. There was no cheering, no celebration. The humans were disciplined, knowing that survival was only part of their responsibility. Yet in their eyes burned pride and relief, a quiet understanding that they had faced death and won. Lieutenant Mara Tolan approached Kane, her expression serious yet soft. "Captain, we've done the impossible. The Dominion. They'll never see humans the same way again." Kane nodded slowly. "No," he said quietly. "They will never forget this day. But remember, Mara, it's not just the destruction of their ships that matters. It's the message we've sent. Courage, ingenuity, and refusal to surrender. That is humanity's real power." The silence of the ship was broken by the distant hum of debris drifting past. Outside, the stars seemed to shimmer differently, as if space itself recognized. The courage displayed in this corner of the galaxy. Survivors among the Dominion fleet would carry stories of the small silver ship that tore through their armada, the one that dared to defy impossible odds. And in those stories, humanity would rise, a symbol of hope and defiance for all who had suffered under tyranny. Kane walked to the viewing deck. He stared into the stars, thinking of the countless lives across the galaxy that had been watching this battle unfold. Humans had become more than warriors in the void. They had become a legend, a spark in the darkness. He thought of colonies that had been raided, worlds oppressed, species crushed under the Dominion's heel. Perhaps now, those who had once lived in fear would dare to hope. "Captain," said Varric, breaking the quiet, "we've done all we can here. Systems are stable, but we're running low on supplies. We should chart a course back to the nearest human colony." Kane nodded. "Set the course. But let this moment linger in our minds and hearts. Humanity has proven that even the smallest ship with the right crew can challenge empires. That will be our story to tell." As the Resolute moved through the stars, drifting past broken ships and shattered fleets, the crew finally allowed themselves to breathe. Faces streaked with soot, sweat, and exhaustion now glowed with pride. They had survived the impossible. They had made history. They had shown the galaxy the true spirit of humanity, unyielding, fearless, and unstoppable, when united by purpose. Far away, across distant systems, whispers began to spread. News of the battle traveled faster than any fleet, carried by traders, observers, and survivors. "A single human ship destroyed an entire fleet," they murmured. "The humans are different. They cannot be defeated." The galaxy began. To see what Kane and his crew already knew, humans were not just another species to be mocked or conquered. They were a force, born from courage, tempered by struggle, and capable of feats no empire could predict. On board the Resolute, Kane looked at his crew one final time. Each human there had faced fear, uncertainty, and death, and each had refused to break. They were more